If I stop uploading here, you can find me via my website in the description below. Chapter 1, 1490. The Mayfly Race and the Insect Seas. This was an inky black monster with 6 feelers extending from its head and 6 blade-like limbs. This being wasn't much smaller than the purple blood puppet, and its entire body was covered in steel-like strands of hard fur. Its 2 eyes were long and thin and shimmering with an eerie red light, while the 2 pairs of bird wings on its back were flapping rapidly. It was also a massive, strange insect. The insect and the purple blood puppet remained unaffected by the sharp screech, even though they were so close to the insect projection, and they were flashing through the air like wraith-like apparitions. On many occasions, the pillars of red light seemed to have punctured their bodies, only for those to revealed as mere after-images. As the purple blood puppet was taking evasive measures, it produced a massive axe and unleashed a relentless barrage of crescent axe projections. In contrast, the giant black insect was attacking with its 6 limbs, which were flashing through the air to unleash streaks of black light that resembled sharp spikes. Most of their attacks were vanquished by the red pillars of light, and even the ones that snuck through were kept at bay by a layer of invisible power. What is that? Could it be that it's a heavenly mayfly tier being? The white-haired beauty exclaimed as she stared at the insect projection. I'm actually more intrigued by fellow Taoist Liu Zu's true form, Mu Qing murmured as her pupils contracted. The white-haired beauty repressed her shock as a dark expression appeared on her face, and she said, "Now's not the time to be arguing about such trivial matters, fellow Taoist Mu. Heavenly mayfly tier beings are only second to true spirits within the mayfly race. If that thing is truly such a being, then none of us would be able to escape. Sister Lan, have you still not figured it out yet? That thing is just the projection of a heavenly mayfly tier being, and it must have been forcibly summoned here through the use of a secret technique by the puppet that Liu Zu and Di Shui were pursuing. As soon as this projection exhausts all of its power, it'll disappear." Liu Zu and Di Shui are clearly well aware of this, which is why they're merely doing all they can to stall for time, Mu Qing said in a calm voice. A projection. The white-haired beauty faltered upon hearing this, before carefully appraising the gargantuan fly up ahead. Only after a long while did she heave a sigh of relief as she said, "That is indeed just a projection. It possesses only around 1/5 of the power of a true heavenly mayfly. Furthermore, none of the actual being's spiritual sense had been imbued within this projection. Otherwise, the 2 of them wouldn't have been able to last so long. Even so, this thing's attacks are extremely powerful. If the puppet or Liu Zu were to get hit by any one of those attacks, they'd be in real trouble. Of course, even though it's only a projection, heavenly mayfly tier beings are only second to true spirit beings. After all, so this is certainly not something we can contend with." Mu Qing sighed in a resigned manner. After ascertaining the nature of this projection, the 2 women naturally weren't going to charge in battle against it. They merely looked on from afar, patiently awaiting the moment that the power of the insect projection would run out. Meanwhile, Han Li listened to their conversation off to the side with a peculiar look in his eyes. The situation unfolding before their eyes naturally wasn't something that he could meddle in. At this moment, the white-haired beauty looked down at the high-grade demon beasts, which were still rolling around on the ground below, and her brows furrowed as she swept a sleeve downward. A swath of black light swept forth instantly, enshrouding all of those demon beasts within. The demon beasts immediately returned to their senses and finally stopped thrashing and writhing. But all of them were still completely feeble and unable to rise to their feet. However, the white-haired beauty showed no intention of doing anything else to help them as she turned toward the colossal insect projection again. It was just as Mu Qing had said. The devastatingly powerful insect projection suddenly began to radiate piercing red light a while later, then exploded into countless pieces amid a rumbling boom before finally disappearing without a trace. The pillars of crimson light raining down from above also instantly vanished. The strange black insect and purple blood puppet both heaved a massive collective sigh of relief before standing still, on the spot to recover both their composure and energy. After a brief period of recuperation, both of them flew toward Mu Qing and the others. Moments later, the purple blood puppet and the black insect appeared in the air overhead, even though they had determined well in advance that this insect was none other than Liu Zu. Both Mu Qing and the white-haired beauty were still staring at it with grave expressions. Crimson light flashed from the shoulders of the purple blood puppets, following which the two crimson-robed figures appeared. They'd been hiding within the puppet's body this entire time. Meanwhile, black light swirled around the black insect's body, and it quickly shrank before adopting a human form. It was none other than Liu Zu, except his black cloak had disappeared, thereby revealing his true appearance. Han Li's heart jolted with shock as he cast his gaze toward the man. Liu Zu's facial features were mostly identical to that of a normal man, and he possessed quite a youthful face. However, he had a pair of green compound eyes that shimmered with a cold light, creating a very unsettling sight to behold. It really is fellow Taoist Liu Zu. The white-haired beauty heaved a long sigh of relief. Was that ever in doubt? Liu Zu asked in a nonchalant manner as he hovered in mid-air with his hands clasped behind his back. Brother Liu Zu, seeing as you possess the body of a spirit insect, are you related in some way to the mayfly race? Mu Qing asked. The mayfly race, I originally hailed from that race. Are you satisfied with that response? Liu Zu replied with a faint smile. Both Mu Qing and the white-haired beauty's expressions both changed drastically upon hearing this. So you knew of this place in advance, yet still intentionally led us to this place. The white-haired beauty's voice immediately cooled significantly. I'm afraid that you've wrongly accused me here, fellow Taoists. I was aware that the mayfly race had a holy land, but at the time my cultivation base was far too pitiful to be informed of its specific location. After that, I stayed in the Earth Abyss for countless years, and I've been stuck at my current cultivation base for almost longer than I can remember. If I'd known that there was an entrance leading to this place from the Earth Abyss and wanted to plot against you from the beginning, why would I have delayed so long before leading all of you here? I really did unintentionally discover that this place could be accessed from the Earth Abyss through the infernal river, but I truly had no idea that the mayfly race would send puppets to this place. According to my knowledge, the holy land of the mayfly race usually only opens up once every few thousand years, and it's only been several centuries since we were last here. I can only say that we were extremely unfortunate to have encountered these puppets under such circumstances. On top of that, if I were working with the mayfly race, why would I have only asked for puppets to be deployed to this place? I'm well aware of your abilities, and I'm certainly aware of the fact that those puppets would have been no match for you. Liu Zu replied in a calm manner. Mu Qing and the white-haired beauty exchanged a glance upon hearing Liu Zu's words. The two of them couldn't identify any holes in his logic, but both of them knew that he wasn't telling the truth somehow. It was just that they couldn't identify what exactly he had lied about. What do you think, fellow Taoist Di Shi? Mu Qing suddenly turned to the two crimson-robed figures. The two of them had remained completely silent from the moment they'd reappeared on the shoulders of the purple blood puppet. The two crimson-robed figures exchanged a glance upon hearing this, before one of them replied, I think Brother Liu Zu is telling the truth. Even though Brother Liu Zu isn't the one who spent the longest time among us in the Earth Abyss, he's definitely not the only who's been in the Earth Abyss for the shortest period of time either. So if he wanted to plot against us, there really is no need for him to resort to these tactics. Could it be that two of you want to turn back now? We've already made the mayfly race our enemy. Would you two be willing to give up on the divine infernal river Elixir after all that? The crimson-robed figure had completely sided with Liu Zu. Mu Qing and the white-haired beauty couldn't help but exchange another glance upon seeing the crimson-robed figure's stance on the matter. A short while later, the white-haired beauty's expression eased, and she smiled as she said, Seeing as fellow Taoist Di Hui believes in Brother Liu Zu, we're also willing to do the same. However, if the mayfly race has already become aware of intruders in their holy land from our last visit here, why didn't they deploy more troops or send more actual golden mayfly tier beings to this place rather than station all these puppets here? In that case, it would have been very difficult for us to get away. That's quite simple. The mayfly race discovered our intrusion from last time, but they don't know when we were going to come back again. So they could only station beings here that could permanently remain in this place. Even though this is the holy land of the Maplefly race, normal beings of the race wouldn't be able to stay here for long. Otherwise, their cultivation bases would be severely damaged at best, and in worst-case scenarios, they could even die here. If we'd encountered a true insect sea army, we'd be devoured until not a single shred of our bodies remained. Liu Zu replied. The white-haired beauty shuddered upon hearing the words insect sea, and she forced a smile onto her face as she replied, There's no need to make such jokes, brother Liu Zu. The mayfly race may not be particularly renowned elsewhere in the spirit realm, but their influence in this area is not inferior to that of the major races of the spirit realm. They wouldn't deploy an insect sea army just to take care of a few body integration stage beings like us. A hint of fear also flashed through Mu Qing's eyes before she gave a calm analysis. Indeed, from what I've heard, even true spirits are fearful toward the insect seas deployed by the mayfly army. Conversely, unleashing insect seas is extremely taxing to the entire race, so they wouldn't do so unless the circumstances were extremely dire. I didn't think that the two of you would know so much about our mayfly race. Indeed, it would only take a single heavenly mayfly tier being to destroy all of us, so there's certainly no need to deploy an insect sea. That's enough on this matter for now. Let's get away from this place. It won't be a simple task for the mayfly race to deploy more beings to this place, and that process would take them at least several months. That's enough time for us to find the divine elixir, then return the way we'd come. We did suffer some severe casualties at the hands of those ghostly beings, but we've also slain many of the high-grade ghostly beings in the infernal river, so the rest of our journey should be a lot smoother. By the way, how many more ghostly soldiers and puppets do we have at our disposal? Liu Zu asked. Chapter 1. 1491 Yin Water Essence and the 5 Dragon Chopper. I stored away as many puppets as I could when those ghostly beings attacked, but there are only just over 1,000 of them left. One of the crimson-robed figures replied, "My situation is even worse. Not only were the ghost monarchs severely wounded by the puppet's self-detonation, all of them remaining profound ghosts were also destroyed by the wind attribute ability you unleashed." The white-haired beauty sighed. "What are you saying, fellow Taoist Lan? Even though we agreed that you had to refine 8,000 profound ghosts, the pure yin qi I supplied to you was far more than enough to refine that number of ghostly soldiers. So you must have refined more than the 8,000 that were revealed. Right now's not the time to be hiding such resources," Liu Zu said as his expression darkened. The white-haired beauty faltered upon hearing this, and a slightly awkward look appeared on her face. "I didn't think that you were aware of this, brother Liu Zu. Indeed, in order to prepare for unforeseen circumstances, I refined 500 extra profound ghosts. Even though that's not a lot, their individual prowess is far superior to that of normal yin armor profound ghosts. All right, even though there are still several more perilous places we must pass through during the remainder of our journey, those profound ghosts on top of what's left of the puppets should be enough to get us through to the finish line. I know that you may not fully trust me, but once we secure the divine infernal river elixir, we'll be able to split up and you can go wherever you please. However, I advise you not to try any little tricks before that. Otherwise, don't blame me for turning on you." A threatening tone crept into Liu Zu's voice as he spoke. The other demon monarchs' expressions changed slightly, but none of them responded to his words, as if they hadn't heard him in the first place. Liu Zu didn't find their reaction to be strange in the slightest. He merely waved a hand through the air and said, "Let's go." He then transformed into a ball of black light that flew on ahead. The dozen or so high-grade demon beasts down below immediately followed suit. The 2 crimson-robed figures glanced at one another before sweeping their sleeves through the air in unison, summoning specks of black light from within. Those specks of black light then began to glow with spiritual lights of different colors before transforming into puppets of different shapes and forms. These puppets had clearly been carefully preserved by the 2 crimson-robed figures. Not only were they all in brand-new condition, most of them were extremely intricately crafted. At this moment, the white-haired beauty also raised a hand to hurl forth a palm-sized black leather pouch, and the pouch rotated in mid-air before tipping itself over to expel a burst black yin winds. A group of black-armored ghostly soldiers then emerged from within those yin winds. These ghostly soldiers appeared to be quite similar in appearance to the yin armor profound ghosts from before, but they appeared to be more sturdy and also larger in stature. From a distance, they presented quite a formidable sight to behold. "Go!" The ghostly soldiers swept toward Liu Zu as a swath of black mist under the white-haired beauty's command. Yuan Yao and Yan Li could only part with Han Li to follow the white-haired woman. At this moment, the puppet army also rose into the air and flew along at low altitudes. with spiritual light of different colors enshrouding their bodies. The purple blood puppet led the way from the two crimson-robed figures still situated on its shoulders. Mu Qing glanced at Han Li with an indifferent expression before also flying away with her golden flower beneath her feet. "Let's set off as well, fellow Taoist Han." Han Li turned to discover Jin Ling appraising him with a hint of a smile on its face, seemingly intent on staying with Han Li to monitor his actions. Thus Han Li nodded expressionlessly before rising up into the air as a streak of azure light. The golden ape chuckled before following closely behind him as a streak of golden light. A few days later, in front of a cave in a set of grayish-white mountain ranges situated deep within the infernal river, there were several ghostly beings of different forms standing motionlessly on the spot. These ghostly beings were enshrouded under a layer of azure smoke, and among them were faint white shadows, as well as massive skeletons that were several tens of feet tall. The white-robed ghostly woman who'd faced Han Li in battle once before abruptly departing was one of those ghostly beings. However, all of them were severely wounded, and their auras were extremely feeble. Even the ghostly woman that had proven to be a very troublesome opponent to Han Li was missing an arm, leaving her as an amputee. Standing at the very center of these ghostly beings was a puppet clad in a suit of crimson armor. This was one of the crimson-armored puppets deployed by the Mayfly race. From its outward appearance, this puppet was no different from the other normal crimson-armored puppets. However, the ghostly beings around it clearly all wore expressions of awe and veneration, seemingly rather fearful of it. The puppet stood in a stationary manner among the high-grade ghostly beings, appraising the dark cave before it with faint green light shimmering in its eyes. After a while, a long sigh sounded from deep within the cave, following which an elderly voice rang out. "Don't you think it's inappropriate for the Mayfly race to be requesting for my help?" The ghostly beings all adopted serious expressions upon hearing this. The crimson-armored puppet replied, "I'm only doing this because I have no choice, senior. The ones who have encroached upon our holy land are far more powerful than we'd imagined. And there are 4 of 5 of them that are even more powerful than our golden Mayfly tier beings. Aside from myself, all of the puppets have been destroyed. I've already sent out a signal requesting for assistance, but it'll take at least half a year before reinforcements will arrive. By that time, those people would have most likely fled the scene well in advance. Seeing as you have some ties with our Mayfly race, I can only request for your assistance, senior." The crimson-armored puppet extended a respectful bow toward the opening of the cave. "Humph. The agreement I made with your Mayfly race was that I would only stay in your holy land for a while in order to rest and recuperate. I'm not pledging my allegiance to the Mayfly race. I've already repaid any debts I owe you. And I even went out of my way to gather all of these high-grade ghostly beings to assist you on this occasion, yet now you're asking me to fight for you in person. Don't you think that's gone too far?" The owner of the elderly voice harumphed coldly, and the entire cave tremored with his discontent. "Senior Jiang, I'm not familiar with the details of your agreement with our Mayfly race, but with your unfathomable powers, taking care of those beings would be an extremely simple task for you. If you're really reluctant to eradicate them in person, then please allow me to borrow your 5-dragon chopper." "That will suffice as well," the puppet replied. "The 5-dragon chopper is one of my most prized treasures. Why should I lend it to you? I paid a sufficiently heavy price to the elders of your Mayfly race in order to enter the infernal river." The elderly man seemed to have recalled something, an unsavory memory, and his voice cooled even further. The crimson-armored puppet didn't dare to push the elderly man any further. Instead, it suddenly produced an extremely intricate, thumb-sized black vial before proposing, "Prior to my departure, the elders of our race bestowed upon me a small vial of yin water essence. I'm willing to offer this in exchange for your assistance, senior." Yin water essence. The owner of the elderly voice seemed to be quite stunned by this offer. The puppet was filled with renewed hope upon hearing the shift in the elderly man's tone, and it continued. "It takes over 100,000 years just for a tiny drop of this yin water essence to be formed, and not much of it can be found even in the entire spirit realm, making it an extremely rare treasure." A burst of black light swept forth from within the cave, wrenching the small vial from the puppet's grasp before drawing it into the cave. But the puppet made no effort to stop this. "This is indeed yin water essence. Looks like those old monsters in your Mayfly race have got me wrapped around their fingers. The elderly man sighed in a resigned manner. Then you've agreed to help me? Senior, the crimson-armored puppet, was ecstatic. I have. But I've already made an agreement with the elders of your race to repress the yin-chi backlash of this space for your mayfly race. During recent times, the source, the yin-chin in this place, has been rather unstable, so I won't be able to leave this place. As such, I can only lend you my 5-dragon chopper. The elderly man replied after a brief hesitation. Thank you, Senior. With the 5-dragon chopper, I'll be able to slay those intruders with ease. The crimson-armored puppet said in an elated voice. All right, here's the treasure. The elderly man wasted no further time as a streak of silver light shot forth from within the cave, reaching the crimson-armored puppet in a flash. The puppet focused its gaze to find a mundane-looking silver chopper hovering before it. Aside from the fact that the surface of its blade was as smooth and bright as a mirror, there was nothing else out of the ordinary about it. Senior, is this really the 5-dragon chopper? The crimson-armored puppet picked up the chopper and carefully examined it with a hint of bewilderment in its eyes. Hehe, are you worried that I'm swindling you? The elderly man chuckled coldly. The crimson-armored puppet hurriedly shook its head and tried to explain. I wouldn't dare to think that. It's just that this chopper. However, right at this moment, the chopper tremored and flew out of its grasp, then hovered in mid-air before radiating brilliant silver light. Immediately thereafter, several clear dragon roars erupted from the chopper, following which 5 massive worm projections slowly emerged along its blade, presenting an intimidating yet spectacular sight to behold. I refined this 5-dragon chopper many years ago from the souls and remains of 5 immensely powerful worms I'd slain while traveling on other continents. Back when it was first forged, it was immediately instated on the chaotic myriad spirit roll, and even now, it's still among the top few handful treasures on that spirit roll, the elderly man declared in a proud voice. Apologies for my foolishness, Senior. I'll immediately return this treasure after I take care of those intruders. The crimson-armored puppet was ecstatic upon seeing the worm. Projections manifested by the chopper, and it immediately made a hand seal, following which the chopper disappeared up its sleeve as a streak of silver light. Chapter 1. 1492. Control. I've already cultivated this treasure to be one with my soul, so even if you take it away from here, I can recover it at a whim. On top of that, you won't be able to make use of the treasure's full power, especially not in that puppet body of yours. I'll impart upon you a mantra for you to activate the power of your spiritual sense to control the 5-dragon chopper. Even though you won't be able to wield this treasure for long, it should be more than enough to take care of those intruders. However, if you choose to do this, the spiritual sense that you've infused into this puppet will be severely damaged. Are you sure you want to take this course of action? The elderly man asked. Green eyes flashed in the puppet's eyes upon hearing this, and it quickly replied, If we don't stop these outsiders, I'll be punished by the elders of our race, even if I were to make a safe return. I'd rather take the risk and sacrifice this portion of my spiritual sense if required. Good. Seeing as that's the case, I'll teach you the mantra right away. The elderly man chuckled before his voice trailed off. However, the crimson-armored puppet's eyes were flashing incessantly, with rapt focus as if it were listening intently to something. After a while, the puppet exhaled before extending a final respectful bow toward the cave. Thank you for your kindness. Senior, I must make haste, so I'll be taking my leave now. Not so fast. Here's a vial of pills. Feed them to the other ghostly beings. As long as these ghostly beings can recover their powers, they'll be of assistance to you. The yin water essence you gave me is quite precious, so I'll throw in the pills to make it a fair trade. A gust of wind swept forth out of the cave, sending a white jade vial flying toward the puppet. The crimson-armored puppet was naturally ecstatic to see this, and it immediately stowed the jade vial away before bidding farewell to the elderly man in the cave again. The ghostly beings also departed in silence behind the puppet. Meanwhile, Liu Zu and the others were flying through the air above a forest filled with dead trees when a large horde of flying skeletons suddenly flew toward them from the forest down below. These skeletons appeared to be remains of some kind of insect beast. All of them had extremely large front limbs that were like pairs of massive bone blades, and their bodies were enshrouded in balls of yellow chi as they charged toward the army of puppets and ghostly soldiers. In order to conserve their magic power, Liu Zu and the others refrained from engaging these insect skeletons in battle. Instead, the puppets and ghostly soldiers were deployed to face the oncoming enemies. Swaths of saber projections and sword chi hurtled through the air amid gusts of yin winds, quickly slicing these skeletons into countless pieces. However, a peculiar scene then ensued. Regardless of how severely damaged the skeletons were or how many pieces they'd been pulverized into, as soon as they fell into the dead forest, they'd be completely regenerated before flying up to join the fray again. It was as if they possessed immortal bodies. Hanli had also refrained from engaging in this battle, but his expression changed slightly upon seeing this. Thankfully, they still had many puppets and ghostly soldiers left. Otherwise, these skeletons would have been quite a nuisance to deal with. It was no wonder that Liu Zu and the others had insisted on preparing so many puppets and profound ghosts before embarking on this journey. Thus, everyone flew onward while the puppets and ghostly soldiers kept these insect skeletons at bay. And it took them the better part of a day to finally fly out of this dead forest. After emerging from the forest, the insect skeletons were unable to continue regenerating, and they disintegrated into clouds of grey mist after their remains plummeted to the ground. The skeletons seemed to possess a certain level of intelligence as they immediately returned to the forest after, witnessing the fate that befell that less fortunate companions. And that was Han Li quite amazed by this sequence of events. It appeared that this dead forest had to have some unique properties. If it weren't for the fact that Liu Zu and the others were intent on forging ahead as quickly as possible, he would have been quite tempted to investigate the area. After flying onward for a while longer, a large black lake suddenly appeared up ahead. The surface of the lake was inky black and enshrouded under a layer of faint green mist. It was quite obvious that this was not the place for a picnic. However, Liu Zu paid no heed to this as he flew on ahead, leading everyone directly into the mist without any hesitation. Not long after that, sounds of battle erupted within the mist once again. A month later, all of the puppets and ghostly soldiers had been completely eradicated, and everyone was greeted by the sight of a set of grey mountain ranges in the distance. That was their final destination, the Yin Bone mountain ranges, where divine infernal river elixir could be found. At this point, there were barely even any high-grade demon beasts left aside from the demon monarchs. With Han Li and Jin Ling's powers, they were naturally still alive and well. Yin Yao and Yan Li encountered perilous situations on several occasions during the journey, but Han Li had made an effort to look after them, so they managed to survive those ordeals with only minor injuries. At this moment, the group stopped around 50 kilometers away from the mountain ranges. The demon monarchs had gathered together to discuss something with grave expressions on their faces. Han Li was looking on at the mountain ranges up ahead with a heavy heart. The second half of the journey had not gone as he'd expected. He'd thought that with how perilous the infernal river was, there would always be chances for him to get away from the demon monarchs. However, to his surprise, they did encounter some perilous situations along this stretch of the journey, but none that were able to draw the demon monarch away. Furthermore, Jinling seemed to have received some kind of instruction from Mu Qing, as the golden ape refused to leave Han Li's side. What was even more depressing to Han Li was that this golden ape was also proficient in some kind of spirit eye ability. So even if he were to unleash some kind of concealment technique, it'd be very difficult for him to escape its surveillance. Of course, if he wanted to escape on his own, he could still escape using his high zenith invisibility talisman. After all, as his magic power improved, the potency of the talisman had also been markedly enhanced. However, if he couldn't take Yuan Yao and Yan Li with him, then he wouldn't be able to eradicate the tracking marks planted in his body by the 4 demon monarchs. In that case, how far would he be able to get before he was simply caught again? Han Li looked on at the grey mountain ranges in the distance as he pondered his situation. According to Liu Zu and the others, this so-called divine infernal river elixir could be found at the center of the mountain ranges. The demon monarchs hadn't disclosed what effects this divine elixir had, but for a being at the pinnacle of the body integration stage, like Liu Zu to risk his life just to secure this elixir clearly indicated how precious it was. However, seeing as this was the holy land of the mayfly race, there were definitely going to be powerful restrictions around the source of the elixir, and it was most certainly not going to be an easy task to secure it. All of a sudden, Han Li discovered that the demon monarchs all seemed to be looking at him. All of them wore different expressions on their faces, and it seemed that they were engaged in a heated argument. Mu Qing was shaking her head emphatically, while a cold light had appeared in Liu Zu's eyes. The white-haired beauty wore an indecisive look on her face, while expressions of the crimson-robed figures remained a mystery to Hanli as their faces were enshrouded under layers of crimson light. Hanli's heart immediately sank upon seeing this. He didn't know what these demon beasts were talking about, but if the discussion involved him, then it definitely wasn't a good thing. Hanli forcibly repressed the unease in his heart as he cast his gaze toward the mountain ranges with a contemplative look on his face. After a long while, Liu Zu's cold voice suddenly sounded, "Come over here, fellow Taoist Han. We have something we need you to do." Han Li pursed his lips and slowly flew over to them. "What do you need from me?" Senior Han Li asked as he cupped his fist in a salute. Liu Zu was appraising Han Li completely expressionlessly, while both Mu Qing and the white-haired beauty wore rather strained expressions. "Please have a look at this fellow Taoist Han." Liu Zu suddenly raised a hand to offer up the black bead for Han Li's inspection. Han Li faltered upon seeing this object, and he felt that it was rather familiar, so he drew closer to get a better look at it. However, as soon as he focused his gaze on it, black light flashed from the black bead, and a thin beam of black light shot forth from it like lightning. Han Li's heart jolted as he immediately tried to take evasive measures, but the air abruptly constricted around him as if it had been turned into iron and steel, completely immobilizing him. Mo Qing and the white-haired beauty had just raised a hand each to unleash a restriction on him. Han Li's body was immensely powerful, but there was no way that he could struggle free of a restriction, conjured up by two body integration stage beings at once. Thus the beam of black light disappeared into his glabella in an instant. Black light flashed over Han Li's face, following which his eyes became completely vacant, and he no longer tried to resist. Yuan Yao and Yan Li were naturally extremely alarmed to see this. However, before the two of them had a chance to do anything, crimson light flashed in front of them, following which the two crimson-robed figures appeared. They then immediately plastered a crimson talisman onto each woman's shoulder, and those talismans instantly exploded, transforming into two plumes of crimson threads that enshrouded the two women in the blink of an eye. One of the crimson-robed figures then made a hand seal, and the crimson threads instantly disappeared into their bodies. Yuan Yao and Yan Li felt their bodies go numb before they lost control over their motor functions, but their consciousness was still fully alert. Their eyes were filled with fury and horror, yet they couldn't muster up any facial expressions, thereby giving them an extremely wooden appearance. "My body control talismans can control all bodily functions, including even one's spiritual qi. You're both conscious, but you'll be forced to do my bidding as long as I don't remove these talismans," the other crimson-robed figure said in an indifferent voice. The two of them then swept their sleeves through the air, sweeping up the two women before flying into the distance. Following just a few flashes, they returned to where Yuan Yao and Yan Li had originally been situated. At this moment, Liu Zu cast a series of incantation seals into the black bead in his hand while chanting something at the same time. Moments later, a low ringing sound erupted from the bead and it flew out of his hand. It then embedded itself firmly into Han Li's glabella as if it had become his third eye. Black light flashed erratically over the surface of the bead, creating an extremely unsettling sight to behold.